Good afternoon. Welcome to Tile Basics Session 1. In this session, we will go through various help resources, how to get technical support. I'll show you the licensing and version information for the software that you have. We'll go through the graphical user interface as well as the instrument library and just get to the very beginning of building out an emissions profile that we'll go through in sessions 1 through 8 or 9 as we step through each of the building blocks to putting together a profile. When you first open Tile for the very first time, you get a fairly ordinary screen layout. This is the default layout. It can be adjusted. We'll get into how the user interface can be adjusted shortly. What I wanted to begin with is the help menu. When you first get Tile, there's a learning curve. Even if you haven't had your training yet, there are some things that you can do. But everything that you need does exist in the help menu. You can go, if you click on Tile Help, there's a very comprehensive reference manual that we've written. Especially in the last couple of years, it's really been very well done. We have a full-time tech writer working on this, updating the graphics, updating the information. It's easily searchable. You can search for, there's a SPeaks is a math function we'll be using later. We can search for it, find where it is in the manual, look up the information. There's a description. You can look up different topics and things and find them fairly easily. For more advanced programming, which we will not be getting into in the basic series, there's also a scripting guide and math scripting help. But what I want to show everyone right now is a couple of things. There's a license action here. When you click on the license option in the menu, you're presented with the status of the hash key that you have plugged in. So my key being a demo license that I use regularly, this is the hash by ID number. This is when it expires. This is how many days to that expiration. And then it gives the status of my license. Now my license, because I travel a lot, my license is a temporary license. So when this date counts down to 0 and goes negative, the fact that it's temporary, Tile will not function with it. It won't work. When you purchase Tile, the keys that we create for you say permanent, where mine says temporary. And what that means is you can use Tile into perpetuity as long as you're on a version of Tile that existed during your maintenance time, during your initial 365 days. Now, what does that mean for you? What that means for you is if you buy Tile, in our opinion, it's yours. You own it. And we don't play around with, requiring people to be in maintenance and all these things. But your license will continue to work even if the date expires. You just won't be able to make updates to the software or solicit extra tech support. You'll have working software. The next item, the About Tile screen, actually has quite good information here. What's contained in this About screen not only is the version of Tile and when it was created, but there's also an email link here. This is this Tile support at ETS-Lindgren.com. That email is what you should use if you ever need help with anything. You can put in a ticket on our support portal, which we'll get into later. Or you can email that email address. There's about 12 to 14 people around the world that get those emails, and you're likely to get a more rapid response that way. If you're in maintenance, active maintenance with a Tile license, we can obviously also schedule times to get on the phone, maybe do a screen share. In unusual circumstances, we've even been able to do a team viewer session or a Skype session and take control of the computer and help troubleshoot issues live that way. There's many avenues of support available to you, but the first one I would use if it's a basic question would be this Tile support at ETS-Lindgren.com. So we're here, we have tile installed. When you first get tile and you set up your license keys and you install all the software packages, you get to here. One thing I want to highlight that isn't inherently obvious is when you first open a new document, you hit new, the flowchart appears, the palette with all the actions appears. We'll be going through that shortly. All of this comes live. One of the things that you want to do, and I'll demonstrate why we want to do it, is go to the Tools menu, excuse me, and select Build Instrument Database. Building the instrument database is something that each time you update tile you want to do because it'll automatically load the newest drivers. Any newer drivers that have been developed will be ported in and replaced in your instruments directory. This will happen automatically. The log may show some errors. The errors really come from tile, looking for an instrument that's not there while it's doing the load. They're non-critical. The database completes. And what that does is when you go to your instruments panel and you go to add an instrument, which that's what tile's all about, right? Running instruments and taking data. If we go to the driver, let's say we want to set up a spectrum analyzer. So we'll call this SpecAn. We'll go to the driver page. And what that does is instead of just browsing to the directory and kind of using our shorthand to try and figure out what instrument you have, and incidentally, there's 1,593 drivers in here that cover well in excess of 1,700 instruments when you count the IVI drivers that run multiple ones. But what doing the instrument database does is it allows what we call the Explorer to work. This is something that's newer to Tile 7. If you've used older versions of Tile, you may or may not have seen this, but the Explorer is more of a Windows-based path to find your instrument. So we want to set up a spectrum analyzer. That's great. We can sort by spectrum analyzer. We can sort by, let's say, Agilent, and we get all the different spectrum analyzers that Agilent has supported, including it also rolls in older HP analyzers because Agilent was an evolution of HP. So you get to see those too. Now, if we uncheck Agilent and go to Keysight, we'll get all of the Keysight spectrum analyzers as well as the previous generation. We don't list all of the HP ones, but we have the previous later generation Agilent spectrum analyzers. So that's how the Explorer works. And when you're building the database, you're basically putting all the HTML files in that help this search function operate. So we'll use the MXE analyzer and we'll go ahead and save that instrument and just kind of park it in the list while we go through the layout of the software here. So when you first open Tile and you open a new document or a new profile, you wind up with this palette of all the actions. We'll be going through these as we continue through the other sessions of the training, but we have actions to run a control tower, antenna mast, a turntable. The read action, we'll talk to different instruments and put them in different states. We've got different emissions actions, GTEM, test and correlation actions. We have reverb actions. Tile is very comprehensive in capability for EMC testing and even just some basic electrical testing. So in the project tab here, we have the project tree, which is kind of it's almost like an old DOS window look or an early Windows look at what's in the profile. As we build this out and add data items, the data will fill up instruments. If there's multiple instruments, we'll have more than one instrument. As we add actions, that area will fill. Then towards the end in later sessions, we'll be creating graphs and tables, and those directories will fill as well. And then at the bottom, we have this tray where we have data, instruments, and we've got some other data editing and logging tools. Now, what I want to highlight here is how flexible the GUI is. You can move and change things. You can turn things on and off in the view. You don't have to have all these things on. I tend to not leave, unless I'm in a troubleshooting mode, I don't leave the log on. I don't leave the data editor on, and I don't generally leave the Finder on. So I usually wind up with just data and instruments here. And in fact, if I want more working space, I can grab the bar of this window and you can move it around. You can see that you could snap it into different places on the screen. What I like to do is put it over the property window. So I've got my properties, data, and instruments all in one window. I can flip between them. And then I've got an improved, larger flowchart area for all the actions and the things that I'm going to be doing to do a measurement. So that's kind of the basic, getting into tile, getting it open. We're ready to, start building a profile, but just wanted to get you warmed up and ready for the later sessions as we build out this profile and really get moving. Thank you for following along with this, and we'll see you in session 2.